All right, everybody, another surf report on deck here, and I feel grateful just to get this thing started. We had severe technological issues and still do remaining today. So, since I don't have internet, I'm going to have to do something special with the MP4 that I create here, but at least we got this going. And you'll see on all my adaptations here, it should flow fairly similar. This report is for August 17th through August 23rd, 2023, and we're seeking value. And there's a paradox here because remember all that fire versus Taurus? Well, we have in that fire, we had fresh a new moon. I'm making this report on the day of the new moon. Excuse me. And that's in Leo. So it's a Leo 30-day cycle. And ironically, Uranus, as we have indicated here, is going to be front and center. It's the hinge point between that pressure and the square. So we have on the other side of the square, kind of like that new moon cycle. Talked about that last time. This time, the Uranus is hinging us from the pressure there and the Leo-ness of it all and converting that into a very powerful grand Earth trine. Now, there's a lot of implications that we've seen with this square up here, and because I'm ruled by Uranus, I think that really heavily affected me. I'll have more on that later. But all in all, we have a grand Earth trine. We have a Venus square Jupiter. Jupiter is conjunct with Uranus, but it's Uranus, technically Uranus, and I'll show you all about that. So that's what sets us apart. So we've got multiple things here. We have the Leo new moon, and that's kind of the urge to, or the need to feel recognized or be seen. You're emanating at that point throughout this cycle. But with Uranus being the hinge point, we have our individuality to worry about and adapting to change, which is also commensurate with what the sun is going to feel here this week. And so we have Venus, the planet of value, squared off to Taurus. And so it has a much higher difficulty of finding value. So we're seeking value through individuality, and we need to be seen in that. We need to, there's this innate need to see our value in others. So there's a social component here as well. Now, here's the rub. This is supposed to be the influence chart. And what you're going to see, because we didn't have any change lines in here, this also becomes the solution. And when we correlate that with the rave, everything comes together into this. It's hyper-focused on seeking value and a heavy into individuality, finding your own values, but also honoring other people's values. Now, that is commensurate with a high vibe. If you can visualize everyone just respecting other people's values and realizing that we're not trying to push those onto others, but the collective is very, very active. And, to be honest, that's the grand Earth trine, mainly because we have the Mars aspect on this corner and making it easy to activate and easy to feel more empowered. We have power planets on this and change planets. So there's high vibes, high expectation of change. There's the Jupiter aspect with Venus, who is trying to find worth to get back home, and seeking value. That's the nuts and bolts of this. Let's get into more details now. And OneNote would not let me import because I didn't have the cloud on here. I don't have any internet. That's one of the things we lost. We also lost air conditioning, lost the garage door openers, the water purifier, but I'm not complaining and we're still alive. But that was our scorched earth that came through with basically an EMP. The electrician described the flash that we were in. We were in a lightning storm, but we were right next to it, if not in that cloud that basically comes over and scorches our electronics. Uranus got hit, and we're not the only house. It was pretty much this whole neighborhood, but none of this is fixed yet. So still no internet, still no air conditioning, and I'm supposed to get kind of warm here in the next couple days. All right, so here's my adaptation. This is a PDF now of the OneNote, so at least I could do this report. You can see everything is a little more, it's not as fine quality on these images, but let's continue. All right, before I get in the astrology, let's go to the Dreambot, because we always do that. All right, the top word today is days. So there is a time element, but not enough to make it a main meme. The red arrows say high vibe. These are really positive words. And the green arrows is very active. And you can see that's the dominant one today. Today, the Dreambot on 8/16 was about the active dominance here. So the collective mind is very active right now, thinking about doing stuff and getting stuff done. That's a very Leo new moon cycle. It's very motivating. The square Venus and Jupiter are very motivating. There's a lot of energies that are motivating. And even the grand Earth trine is feeling very powerful. And I'll explain all that. Okay, towards the end of our CIRF week, we're looking in between these vertical lines. You'll have Mercury retrograde. We'll get into that in detail, and that will make us with 5 planets that are in retrograde by then. And then at the end of the week, Sun will go into Virgo, making for more ground, more earthy based planets, which means Earth is a dominant factor, a dominant influence this week. So let's see. I don't think much else. See, you can see how this is a PDF instead of the OneNote. But hopefully it won't be too much of a factor for our discussion. We have this obvious grand Earth trine. We have the square that is waning at this point. Now Venus is getting stronger with Jupiter and hanging out there, but the remaining power left, this was the scorching, because you had both Sun and Venus at square over to mainly Uranus, and that's just the tail end on the Venus square Uranus. So there's pressure. I looked at some different archetypes here for the different meanings for this energy that we experienced, and one of those things we experienced is if we put Uranus on electronics and if we put Venus onto buying, we have a lot of pressure to buy a lot of electronics, and that's what we're doing, replacing everything that got fried, including our furnace circuit board. That's kicked off everything. But there are a lot of things we do have. It was interesting here on the Venus square Uranus. You can look at all the different archetypes there, from finding value and worth, because that's what Venus is doing in retrograde, almost returning to value, re-finding value. And Uranus can provide change, can provide insight, but it's the hinge point because it's also part of this beautiful, I'm calling beautiful, but maybe not, maybe a sort of an unsettling, or maybe a feeling of lack of control. And in that, it really focuses in on what matters to you. What is of value in your life? What is this for? It's a very existential time period, but rubber meets the road because it's all Earth. You can't see the numbers here, but we have 6 Earth signs, 5 mutable, and we have the moon right here, which is in a waxing crescent and fresh out of that new moon cycle. So But she momentarily is going to be in the Virgo sign, making this Virgo dominant, but Earth way dominant. Okay. So the overall, I know that's a lot. So in the different cycles, we have the eclipse cycle that we're still in is Aries. So finding our inner warrior, understanding ourselves better, finding identity, where we are in the world. And then the brand new cycle, the 30-day cycle, started with a Leo new moon. And this is still fresh, but now that emotional energy is turned more Virgo, but inside of a Leo moon cycle. Does that make sense? So we're carrying out okay, so start from the smallest. We have, or the most acute. We have now 6 planets, including Moon. We call her a planet in the world of astrology. And so emotions are turning more discretionary and maybe artistic. Virgo can really get a lot done in terms of what needs to be done, or identify at least, and make lists. And so if we got 6 Earth signs, and some of those are very powerful, you got Mars, outer power. This is your yang and ability to get stuff done. And then the inner power with the subconscious, deeply subconscious Pluto, the planet of Capricorn, or getting stuff done. On the cusp with Aquarius, but right now in Capricorn in a Earth sign. And then Jupiter and Uranus on this other part here. Mainly Uranus is because it's the closest to the square and closest to the grand Earth trine, especially Mars. So a lot of power plays here, and it's easy energy amongst each other. So there's positive change over here. There's thoughts and your ability to get stuff done, very powerful over here. And then you've got Pluto, the power, the inner power, the deep, deep inner power. So the whole thing just gets stronger and stronger. The energies intensify for very positive change, power for positive change. Now, here's my only one diagram I think that's kind of broken up, but I'll get a little bit of it up here. You can see that the moon is now settled in between Mars and Mercury. And so this just really lights up the grand Earth trine. Still 6 Earth signs. Yep. And still 5 mutable. So the overall context is dominant to, the energy is dominant to Virgo. So we have lots of Earth and we have lots of mutable. And so that is the definition or the characteristic traits of Virgo. It looks like it's a lot more organized. It looks like we're opposing the Neptune here. So we can see all those 3 planets have an opposition to Neptune. And they're all just beginning that. Not to take away from the grand Earth trine dominance here, but we're building real changes and decimating illusion and fantasy. The grand Earth trine, with all the players that I've talked about, is about building real change, practical. That's an Earth sign there. So everything is talked about is in the practical state. The 3D reality is powerfully changing. And that this opposition over to Neptune sort of decimates the illusion and fantasy. So it has kind of a flavor of the Aquarian, but I don't want to throw too many phases in here. All right, Saturday the 19th. Ego is just not reliable. If you can remember that, to not follow ego, that's a hard, potentially very hard thing to do when Sun is in Leo, but look at all the unpredictability. And so, ego has a high chance of escapism, mainly from this in conjunction over to Neptune, Neptune being the planet of escape. And this in conjunction is an adjustment. So anytime you have adjustments, that energy is perceived as anxiety or adapting. Any type of adapting is a form of anxiety as you start to normalize and seek more comfort in that adaptation. That's the advantage of it. Gives you motivation to calm the situation down and get or assimilate and learn and adapt. So the sun, our ego, our identity, and a very Leo based identity and ego are adapting. It could be problematic for some of us with this opposition over to Saturn. It could make things a little bit more difficult. So difficult to or minimized connection or challenges with connecting, if we're looking at the Pisces thing. Opposite of the sun in Leo, well, the sun in Leo wants to be seen, needs to be recognized, wants to lead and get. So ego is not very reliable. That's the whole point here. Emotions, on the other hand, waxing crescent moon, so getting more and more bright, getting larger in the sky. And so we're in that pre-first quarter moon, but it's in Libra, and Libra is very balanced, very rational. So in a rational sort of a moon could be very hopeful and balanced. And that is a great time to be thinking about these Leo objectives that you made. Hopefully today on Wednesday, you're making those, identifying those goals that you're going to hopefully achieve during this Leo 30-day cycle. And so this switch on Saturday the 19th with the moon going into Libra makes it much more rational, balanced, and reliable. And so I would try to feel your way through, if at all possible, this period of time and not rely solely on your ego and thoughts. This is Sunday the 20th, just midday. And, well, the grand Earth trine has gotten a little bit thinner just because the moon's now gone, but still very strong, still very dominant and getting stronger. We have Venus almost making a perfect square over to Jupiter. So that's the pressure to maybe excessively spend, maybe overlooking for values there, maybe spending more time than you would have with the ones you love. You might have more love. This is a very passionate, or can be very passionate. It can be very more of a wisdom in relationships and family and loved ones. So still a lot there as far as whatever we were calling scorched earth is energy is waning there, but in particular, we need to be looking at the Venus retrograde. So returning to relationships, pressure to maybe feel positive, pressure to maybe feel more optimistic. And then it's worth mentioning that Jupiter and Uranus are in a conjunction now. They're slowly getting tighter here. And this is going to be very positive change, okay, in the 3D reality. Meanwhile, on Monday the 21st, you have the moon over the south node, so it's going to be natural for all of us to maybe interpret more emotions from a past lens, which kind of is a oxymoron in a way, not completely, but emotions are very reflective of the past. And so it's very natural that the past will just you'll be much more aware of those influences. And synchronizing inner and outer power, we're plugged into the practical. We have Mercury and Mars together, so thoughts and action are very Virgo-esque, but they're kind of combined. What you think is what you do. What you do is what you think. A lot more. I mean, that's day-to-day basics of psychology and motivation. But you're going to see this in a heightened state starting mainly today and go for a couple days until Mercury turns retrograde. And then we've got Tuesday, the 22nd. This is where Venus and Jupiter go exact. Venus retrograde, square Jupiter, are going exact at 7:16 a.m. on Tuesday, the 22nd. So there's a lot of alignments that I need to talk about. Relationships heat up. Relationships heat up here. Yearn for positivity and change, being changed. There's this pressure to change. There's also maybe an overspending. Venus square Jupiter is an overspending risk. It is excessively trying to find value, seeking lots of value. So you might have to go buy it. You'd also have, personal finance with Venus in retrograde and wealth generation are at odds with each other. So consider that. All these archetypes that I found for Venus and Jupiter are pretty much what Ange and I are feeling right now. Mercury station at this time. This is 11:23 p.m. and this is station, so that's going to bring a lot of focus on communication. So high focus, no pun intended, but that's another archetype for Mercury. High focus on thinking right. The right part is Virgo. So we need to be thinking about things that we need to do. Saying things accurately, working more towards perfection, if you will, in the thoughts. And that's because Mercury station means that it's sort of frozen and not moving one way or the other in relation to Earth. Until Wednesday the 23rd, and Mercury goes full retrograde starting at 6:16. You can see that here. And so this is a time that thoughts really do return. We're going to have going back to learning and past maybe mistakes, relearning. Travel, some say, is much more difficult, and especially now with perfectionism at the height with Virgo. And then before that time, this is when the sun goes into Virgo. So now we're back to 6 planets in Earth signs. We have a heavy amount of mutables, and we have 3 planets in Virgo. So at this point, at 4 a.m., 4:01, on Wednesday the 23rd, this is when sun is going to go into Virgo land. And the overall energetic scape is 6 Earth signs, 5 mutable, making us especially even more Virgo-esque. Can be very creative, can be very artistic, and can think. And this is going to be the advantage of Mercury eventually in a full retrograde. It's a high level of relearning and assimilating, practically assimilating. It's very good for that. All right, let's get into the I-Ching. Diverging interest is hexagram 38. Some level of estrangement is indicated. And this really does speak to, if we haven't seen enough evidence already, of the Uranus emphasis. This is it, in my opinion. Diverging interest means that we are seeking much more individuality. This is the Uranus aspect. And with Venus and Sun, at least initially in the week, are square over to Taurus, it's that yearn for value. So it's a combination of individuality and finding value. It's basically agreeing to, when diverging interests make a situation seem stagnant or futile, remember that there are always creative possibilities inherent in polarities. So it's good to have differences. And in this case, since everyone is probably seeking worth and value, at least in the collective unconscious, which is a very subtle but powerful force, you'll see people struggling to find value, maybe in themselves or monetarily, all of that. Circumstances can make you wonder if you are crazy or missing something, but your unique perspective and authentic nature should not be sacrificed for union. Okay, so you're not going to make sacrifices on what's important to you just to get along. That is not indicated here. We often feel more severely judged when we are judging others. So there's another hint that we're not going to be judging others. The energy graph is very earth. It's very value-based, and it has a strong Uranus component. Remembering, too, that we have the overall Leo new moon cycle, and we're in the very beginning stages of it. So it's just conceptualizing, rehearsing the goals, the Leo goals that you're trying to create for this month. And that's going to be in the next CIRF report, is the high time for really banging those out, getting those goals met, the Leo goals. But this week, the energy that you have to work with is largely mutable, adapting Earth. And strong sense of values. It starts really high at the beginning of the week. Takes it might just be straight across here. You may or may not feel this little dip. It's still going to be very strong. The earth energy, the values, and seeking individuality. So let's take a break here and let's go to the solution, the solution slide, summary slide. And value. The influence overview is the Earth dominant energy this week involves a powerful and value-based grand Earth trine, GET, which influences us to pay attention to what we value and what matters to us, especially as the pressure on Uranus mixed between the power of the grand Earth trine, the pressure of the square, and the 3D-ism, the practical reality of it all, of Taurus, heightens the urgency for individuality towards this value-driven end. Late in the CIRF week, the sun moves into Virgo and Mercury turns retrograde. Ironically, these energies actually continue and exacerbate the earlier influences. Exacerbate might be a connotation of negativity. I did not mean that. And so just tend to increase the earlier influences or keep those influences afloat. All right, we'll get to the solution now. Transition to the solution. And I have to get us back there. Now we didn't have any change lines, so now we're looking for solution indicators in the same hexagram 38. One is reminded of the interplay of the opposites, yin and yang, which is fundamental to life itself. If opposition has its roots in issues of principle, you must hold on to your integrity and individuality. Let go of vulgar or self-absorbed people who do not share your values. So instead of trying to change their values and convince them that yours are better or that theirs are stupid, we just don't be around them, okay? There's no point. We're not here to influence others this week. We're here to understand others. A change in mindset can work miracles in transforming a tapestry of conflict and opposition. Acceptance and a lack of prejudice give way to tolerance. All right, here's our conversion chart. We're converting Uranus. Uranus is the hinge point between the big Leo versus Taurus energy that's still prominent and this growing grand Earth trine. Very practical, but getting stronger. And so Uranus is there at 23 degrees Taurus. It puts us into, well, look at that, 23 degrees, and is also in Rave 23. And we have the Sidereal Aries that we're going to incorporate into the solution. So we have splitting apart, that's 23. Watch this. Watch. Line 5 is where Uranus is. It's called assimilation, the practical acceptance of the values of another path. Wow. So this brings us full circle. So if everyone's trying to seek value, maybe worth, maybe meaning, and maybe individuality through the lens of individuality, and we also have to honor that, or it's going to really help to honor other people having their individuality. So let them be them is the general gist of the rave. Expansion and contribution through assimilation, the gift of communicating individual insight to the collective. All right, so let's put it all together. Here's the solution coming up for everybody. Zoom in. Boy, this the resolution is awful, so sorry about that. I-Ching 38. So here's our triangulation. Diverging interests. Important to stay true to your core values. And then the rave says the opposite. I mean, not opposite. It adds that you need to look outward and accept other people's values. Okay, and then Aries wants to probably be passionate, intense, bring some confidence to the mix. It's confidence of differing values. So confidence that you know yours and that you don't have to push yours on others. So how do we put all this together? The overlap between the I-Ching 38 and the rave gate 23 line 5 is eye-watering. Use this week to identify, refine, contextualize, personalize, and make more detailed and precise your core values and accept that other people are driven by their core values. And that's okay. We are not being told to convert other people towards our values, quite the opposite. You do you and let them do them. But ironically, the Sidereal Aries suggests that we freely use passion and intensity for upholding what matters to us individually. And when you do, when you hold up, when you defend, when you vigorously stand up for what you hold in high regard, i.e. your values, that will most likely emanate out into the people around you, influencing them. So how do we work that out? It doesn't mean don't defend. We have the Sidereal Aries, and that's one of the best archetypes in astrology to defend what's important to you. So we can do that, but don't do it for the sake of influencing. You're not trying to influence. Okay? And it's not like you have to outwardly defend your values. You may be put in a situation where you have to prove your values or make you think deeper about your values. There aren't supposed to be salesmen this week. We are to make stronger commitments to our values and encourage others to the same for their values. We are here this week in the solution. We're here this week to make stronger commitments to your individual values, and then also encourages you to not just understand other people's values, but really revel in the fact that we make our collective better by having different values. Doesn't mean you have to be around them if you don't like those values. It doesn't mean that either. So, the statement that I plan to use, I follow the right cosmic signs to grow stronger in my individual values. And I respect other people's values too. It's both. And it starts with self. If you're have a strong Uranus aspect in your chart, like I do, ruled by Uranus, then individuality will be the hinge point this week on the road to, and what's natural offshoot with that Venus squared energy is finding what matters to you. And that's indicated in all the different technologies that we talked about today. I don't have the runes because it's just, this was way too much trying to get this done, but I'm glad at least I've got this recorded now. Let's get off of here and trying to get this up on YouTube, onto Rumble, and onto BitChute. And that could be a challenge based on my 4G 2 bars that I have. Anyway, all right, you guys have a great week. I hope you're all holding steady and following all these different cycles. There's some big energies that want to distract you from that, but hopefully we talked the essentials about what we're in service of, and the layered approach to energies. So this is the earliest week. Yeah, the acute energy is going to be that all this week is very earth, and it's going to be making you want value, worth, and to find a lot about yourself or break out individuality, find yourself, that kind of thing. And that's in service of the Leo new moon cycle that we're just in the very first week of that. And so you should have very strong goals, or a goal, a Leo goal set up so that next CIRF report, you can then start to really work in earnest on those Leo goals. And that is in service to the Aries inner warrior, finding yourself. All right. October 14th, that all changes. And we will be into a Libra cycle of balance, justice, and getting along, and beautiful things, good, rational, negotiative values across the board. All right. That's all I have, everybody. You have a wonderful week, and hopefully you'll see this soon. Take care.